Hey everybody, hope you had a great trading day. It was pretty much an epic one. It's grinding higher on a lot of really good names here. So let's just jump right into it. And we're just going to do these in 20, there's about 22, 23 names. We're going to do them in alphabetical order. We're going to be covering the most relevant that happened today. When I do these, I get requests. I probably had over 300 requests today. So we whittled it down to about 20, 25 at the end of the day, and just to see how we do. And we're just going to jump right into it here. So after hours, AMC came out with earnings, and they were just really very good considering what people were expecting. The loss was less than they expected, and they beat on the revenue front. What this does to the stock is probably means that the people that are in it are going to be a little boistered to hold the company, and I think they're going to benefit greatly from it. So if you can kind of look at this right here and what's going on, you're above this pivot line, and after hours, you're running right into that 21-day moving average. Okay, now breaking over that gets us through this wedge line. So I don't know if you can see that wedge line or not, but we're going to put it right in there so you can see it. So if you overlay that with this 21, right, you're setting up for a big move. So this could pop to like the 50-day pretty quickly. And it's definitely something that you should be watching and paying attention to if you're looking for a short-term trade at a minimum, because that can happen and it can be pretty violent to the upside. And it could be pretty fast. So it just really depends. I mean, my biggest concern is going to be that they're just going to come out and do another secondary. I mean, they haven't been shy about it at all. So that's the big overhang out there. They just make that announcement and the stock goes down. But overall, it's acting exceptionally good. So we'll have to see how it plays out. But at these levels, you can see a bounce into the mid-40s. If you just look at this on the weekly, it's just been sell-off after sell-off. But there's been one key component that's going on here. And I just want to point this out to everybody. You're not breaking that 3160 level. You're not getting below that. So that's a pretty good sign that you're not getting below that. Now, if you start getting over these weekly numbers like 39, 41, this could keep pushing. And frankly, it could keep pushing all night if they don't come out and issue something about new debt structure or equity offering. I just think people are just going to just buy it on the hopes that it's going to get squeezed. And they may be right. They might be right. It might jump this 21 day. It sure seems to be trying right now, and then just get over it and get over to that 46. So it's very possible that this runs 10 points. I don't think I can be much clearer. ASAN, I got asked about this. We kind of traded up, ran right back into that support level up here, and then we rejected. So we're building a base under this trend line right here. I don't really see a big reason to do anything or panic with it. It's still above the 8-day moving average. It's still doing what it's supposed to do. It probably continues to grind higher, and I really don't see any reason to concern myself with it or do anything about it. Just let it play itself out. We don't have earnings issues for a while, so we'll just play it out and let's see how it goes. BNTX. So this is one that we obviously have been in for a while, and I've been talking about it ad nauseum. And we're now on our fourth target price, and after today, the target's actually probably going to be a little higher. And we can kind of talk about that for a moment. So really what you do when you start having parabolic moves, you wait till you get a close above the previous close, and then you start moving your fib levels. And the way that I draw them, for people, and you can draw them however you find them most relevant, right? To me, see this breakout here? See this breakout, and then you held right here? Watch. So to me, that's going to be a fairly important line. And you can kind of see why, just without me even knowing, you kind of see where it just happens to lay, right? So I find that very accurate to draw them that way. They seem to add value that way in doing it. So let me turn this off. We're going to keep hearing that beep. There we go. So BNTX question is, what do you do now? But to me, that this could easily get up into 559, 560. There's no reason this is not going to continue. Are you overextended? Oh, you're overextended enormously. They don't need cash, so there's not a secondary coming, so I really don't have to worry about that, do I? So that's very important. right? There's nothing for me to worry about there. There's nothing like that I have to really concern myself with. So knowing that, this can just continue to go higher. I mean, look at the volume. It's literally like everybody was just waiting for earnings and to find out that there's not going to be an issue and then bought the stock. That's some of the most significant volume we've had on this name in some time. And I do believe that you're going to see in the fives. I think it's going to take time, but I said this the other day, and I said it on Twitter, actually. If you don't follow me on Twitter, you may want to, because I do throw out a lot of actionable ideas. I brought the fact that this mRNA was just hanging right around this level, this 1% level. It looked to me like it was going to go. We flipped that 419, and that was it. We ripped as soon as we flipped it. And this is a little 3-day pattern, and then it just exploded to the upside. So we'll get into that one later. But BNTX, there's nothing but upside. You just have to be able to ride the waves. I mean, that's really how I feel about it. There's very little that's going to knock that stock down right now, and besides an equity offering, and I don't see why they would do it. Frankly, I'm surprised no large company has really tried to take them over. Btcm, I just wanted to go over this. So we went over this pre-market today, and I want to just point this out. The one level we said was 907. And we said it all day long, 907. It's got to get over 907. And we knew we had an issue this morning. And I just want to cover this, how we know this. Here's the level, and here's us hitting that level. So we drew it 2 days ago, and here it is in play. So by doing that and leaving these lines in, you can see how they act real time. So when this started happening, then broke down, that was really enough for me to see. And then I held some of it, not a lot of it, but I held some just to see if we would go, and then we broke another level, and that was it. But I would be really cautious about chasing these here. This was not the follow-through that I expected to see. And this is why it's always great to have a plan, because it doesn't matter what you think is going to happen. It matters what actually happens. So what you're doing here is you're thinking it's going to go to 9, right? I thought we were going to go to 1018, challenge this, right? That's not what happened. So you're better off dealing with what's actually happening versus what you want to happen. I hope that makes sense. But I wouldn't go near this until we're over this 907 now. You have this huge wick, you have a volume spike, and we hardly are finished halfway up the bar. So crowd's one that we've just been trading around in for some time. It just seems to be basing. So we are basing here, and it's just not doing anything, but it's setting up these little mini moves, and that's how I feel about it. So I'm going to remind myself to throw these symbols in for people that are on their mobiles. But one of the key things you have to think about here is these lines right here, right? 270, 272. We're going to get through this eventually. But what we have to look for is we have to look for another little pattern that might be developing that is telling us that might happen sooner than later. So if you zoom in on this, right, you can kind of see this wedge line right here. Very similar. If you pop over this, it's almost like what happened in mini mRNA, right? So popping over that, you can get up into these 270s, 272 level. And when you start doing that, when you start getting up into that level, you're going to start seeing a little FOMO, and you're going to start seeing some buying. But right now, we're not seeing that. We're just seeing this come in and look at this below average volume. I mean, we're not even hitting the average volume line anymore. So that's not really what you want to see. So we're going to have to give that a couple more days to see how it plays out, but I'd like to see volume. Callaway Golf. So it looks, did we have earnings today? Yep. So you have earnings, stocks rallying on that, right? Let's look at this after hours. So this is obviously after hours today. And let's look at this on the post date and see what we got going on here. Eli Lilly. So, yep, you must have come out with earnings while I'm filming this, and then you can see the moves in here. So this is a great time to explain this. So this is something you should look at, and not just for this stock, but for every stock. So after hours, when you set a range like this, let's get rid of these indicators. That's your range. Okay, now whether you break that range, go up or down, that's going to determine which way you're going. And you can, it's really that simple. This one bar is going to determine which way you're going. Now, if you break down here, some people will short it here and then see if they can get that dollar, or if it breaks up here and see if they can get that dollar. That's not where the trade's really interesting. The trade becomes very interesting when you clear one of these levels. If I just bounce around in here, I could just get tore up. So there's really no point in doing it to me. You can make $1 and move on, but I just don't see the sense in it. I think that there's much better ways to play these. So, and that's, to me, is not one of them. But you have good numbers here, apparently, right? Something came out that people liked. Looks like you're going to be above the 50-day. So if you're going to stay above the 50-day, that's exactly what you want, and trade yourself up. Let's see how the call goes and goes from there. But breaking this trend line down, we can actually redraw this a little cleaner. And then from breaking that and then breaking above this 50 and then going, then you can get up to here to 38. See, you have room. You break that, you can start getting into this. Look, right here. Boop. And then you put this here. So then you can start getting up here. So that can happen. We just have to see it play out. And see how the conference call goes before you rush into this, because you are bouncing all around the place. So I'd want to hear what they have to say. FSR. So I've got this up here a couple times. So let's just throw one of these up and get rid of one of these. So obviously, again, and I like running these, that are moving for whatever reason. This came out this morning and just completely encapsulated all these bars and ran right to the 50-day and has rejected. So when you do that and you reject, to me, it raises a ton of questions. Why are you rejecting the 50-day if it's so powerful? So to me, what I want to see is like, let's do this for a moment. Let's click off this, okay? And let's just look at the day. So really, this is all post-market, this move, okay? So now knowing that that's all post-market, let's go take a look at it, okay? And this is exactly what I'm talking about. We just talked about this. So this is what you're looking for out of it. And now you could make the argument that it's going to happen, but I'd wait for it to happen. So there's your range, okay? What's happening here? You're forming a flag, aren't you? So it could explode at any moment and go through that, but that's your trigger. And if it does go through that, and I'm not saying that algos don't know that, but what I'm saying is to keep it up there and through that is pretty substantial, right? And then if you broke the low of the flag, it's probably, you just want to get out of it. But overall, this can go. If this gets through that 17 and a quarter, this could keep going tonight. So, it depends again, how the call goes and everything else. But look at your moving averages. Get above that 50-day tomorrow, and you're probably going to 1940 pretty quickly. So I like this trade. I like this trade a lot. Not a huge fan of it, but of the company, but that chart looks good. It just seems like there's management-wise, they're just not doing a really good job of telling their story. People really don't understand how long they've been around. And, one of the pioneers of the whole field. Look at that. Just wanted to point that out really quickly. So, that 17 and a quarter level, that's your level. That's a big one. FTNT, this thing's just an absolute beast. I can't even talk about it without just laughing. I mean, everybody thought it was over here, right, on the earnings call, and then look what happens. Look, right? The earnings call comes in, that's it, it's over. It's up 50 points. You're up 20% in 4 to 5 trading days on that. It's crazy. And it just has huge demand. So it looks a little bit ahead of itself, and maybe that's why you're starting to see these bars. But I don't think there's anything to worry about here. I mean, if you want to get super technical, this is a breakout bar, right? And then on top of that breakout bar, you're forming what? Almost like a little pendant, right? So that's not the worst thing in the world, right? So I don't really have an issue with that. If I was in this, I would say to continue to hold it. This was one that got by me because I was too busy looking at other stocks, probably vaccine stocks. I've been pretty heavily in those for some time now, but I just wasn't paying attention to it, and it broke out and it did exceptional. It really did. It did everything that you'd want it to do. So I would continue to stay with it. Goldman, Goldman did what it needed to do today. You broke out, right? And you formed a doji. I'm not crazy about that, but I'm not surprised by it. One of the things that you needed to do, and I talked about this a little bit in yesterday's newsletter, you have to understand you have the CPI number coming out that comes out once a month that really affects two sectors greatly. And one of those sectors is financials. The other is technology. And those two are going to get hit the hardest. Now, you could see energy come in, but long term, energy is energy and you need it, right? And that's more determinate on political and geopolitical climate, things along those lines and how it moves. But interest rates in and of itself, if you have interest rates, strength or weakness, it affects financials and technology, and it affects them both in opposite ways. So raising rates is great for banks because they get to borrow more money, and on top of borrowing more money, they get to lend at a higher rate. And that's all profit, right? And then the problem with tech is that tech has to borrow money, and their borrowing goes up, so tech always comes in on that. It's just the way it is, just the way the system's built. But I think you have to look at this and go, what are we doing here? Well, we came in, we opened up, and we sat perfectly. Okay, we could turn this off, and you're sitting perfectly. Like there's really no reason to do anything. This little click right here, just FYI, I use Trend Spider to do these, and that is just a pre and post button, just when you see me clicking on and off, because I like seeing where they're at now, especially during earnings season, right? I mean, it doesn't really help if I talk about FSR, and we're talking about it at 15 when it's 16 and a quarter. So, but I like Goldman, but CPI is is going to be your issue. JKS, I just want to cover this one really quickly. I really wouldn't go near this until you get over this 58.40 level. Getting through 58.40 is everything. You have to get through that. You have not been able to get through that, right? Bonk, bonk, bonk. Here we are again. Where's my volume? So, and I mean, people are just not buying this. I think they're based, if I'm wrong, I apologize, and someone tell me I'm wrong. But I think they're based in China, and if that's the case, I would just avoid it, because you just don't know what's coming next out of there, and that could be why you're seeing just the volume just completely fall off a cliff, because institutions don't want to play it anymore. So just check that out. If it is, I would just avoid completely. And if it's not, I would wait till I clear 58.40 to get involved. MOS, so Mosaic Company. So this is really interesting because I've broken down, like this one I really like. I've broken down, right? Here's that red bar. I tried to rally. Hold on one second. Put this right back where it was. I try to rally. I can't. I hit the 21 day. I try to rally again, bonk, 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 right? Can't do it. One more bonk. And now here we are again. But this time, what's different? I'm above the 50, right? What else is different? The 8 and the 21 are crossing. What else is different? We're having volume pickup. So this is setting up, right? This is pretty good stuff. Let's see when we're coming out with and earnings. Okay, so we came out with the earnings and everybody was happy. And then you had one of those bars where they pulled down, pulled a flim flam, and then it goes back up. Look, you're over, and I guess the institutions didn't really want you to see that they were buying, and now you're starting to get buyers here. So if you start thinking that it might be institutions, one thing that you can do to educate yourself is look at the end of the day and see if you see a bar like this. Like we just happened to see this, right? And I didn't know that this was there, but if you look in the last 15 minutes and you start seeing stuff like this, that means that's institutional buying. And the reason they do it at the very end of the day is because they don't want you to see them doing it. They don't want one of your scanners on one of your systems showing that they're trading at 400 times volume, 400% volume, right? Because you know it's going to happen. We're all going to buy it because we know that there's demand. So, I mean, they just get smarter and smarter, and the game changes, the rules change, and you have to just change with them. So you have to look at the end of the day on I do a 15-minute chart, but you see things like this. You have institutional buying. This can work. And this could work pretty big. So the very first thing that I would say is you could get back up to this channel, right? By the time you get up there, you're back up to $38, $39, flipping through this, but you have to get through this level. So the high point of this level, the easiest way to do it is going to be this wick, right? $32.95. Get through that, and I think you have a shot at $38, $39. I really do. MRNA, it's very hard to knock this. I find it fascinating it's really interesting if you look at it. Like they had the loss, right, for the year. Then the drug starts rolling out. They're up $2. Now it's at 6.46. I don't think people truly understand how much money these companies are going to earn. And I actually think they're starting to figure it out. When they increase their drug prices by 20%, which they did in the EU, and they're getting booster shots and there's more to it. And I'm just talking about the financial part of it. That's all I'm talking about. And when you look at that, it is literally tens of billions of dollars that they are adding to revenue. And it's all profit now that the research is done. So it just goes right to the bottom line. And that's exactly what's happening here. So this is setting up for a massive, massive move. We have a massive move, but this is setting up for to me, I said this earlier, like Moderna and BNTX, they're setting up to me for like Amgen and Biogen 20 years ago when they had blockbuster drugs. And then they just started buying other companies. And that's what Amgen and Biogen did. And I would not be surprised to see these companies like Moderna and BNTX either merge or just become so big behemoths that they start becoming like the Amgens and they start becoming, of like the Biogens. I do believe that can happen. So I think you're looking at a much longer secular move here. Now, that doesn't mean that this can't drop 100 points because it's Tuesday. It can. But it does mean that you're going to want to stay in front of these names and be involved because 5-10 years from now, where they're at could just be a blip. So just consider that for a moment. I've seen it happen before. I've seen it, and I just want to explain this. Like I've seen it happen with so many of them. Genentech, with not even really around anymore under that name. I'm not talking about like the M clones where they get bought, right? And they're like one-hit wonders. I'm talking about when you have so much cash that you just go out there and you can just start these huge billion-dollar R&D departments, multi-billion dollars. But this is Amgen. And everybody knows it now as a staple. Back here in the 90s, nobody really knew about it. If you look at the cost of this, if you truly went through this, right, and I go back to 94, okay, and you can just kind of see this for a second, see where it's like $5, okay? So, and now we're going into 95, okay? And now I'm at 11, okay, so it's up 100%. Okay, now I'm at 17, so I'm up fivefold in 2 years, and you think that it's a huge move, right? And then this happens, right? Now, for the people that are in here, they're up to 300 times that initial investment, not percent, times the initial investment. So, just put it in perspective. You put $1 million into it, you can kind of do the math and see where you would be at. And I think that these stocks have that kind of potential. I really do. So they seem to fit the mold. Huge cash piles, just enormous cash machines, and they just go out there and they just buy. And I think that's what you're going to see. BNTX's program today and what they said was excellent. I mean, the way they're coming out and they're already being preemptive for the new variants, and then they're talking about variants that they're not aware of and how they're going to handle those. Like it's really, it's what you'd expect from a company like this, but sickly brilliant. Strategy. But let's get back into semis for a second, which I love. They're just acting weak, and I think they're acting weak ahead of the CPI. So for me, looking at this, what we're trying to see if we're going to roll. So we're breaking a little wedge here, and then we broke down, and now we're sitting right on the 50-day. You're going to have to see how this plays out. This is not the day I thought I was going to have in semiconductors. I thought I'd at least trade up a little bit and participate. And that is not what happened. So again, trade what's in front of you, right? Don't trade what you want to have happen. So anyway, what do we do now with this? It needs to hold the 50-day. Like the last thing you really want to do is be in a position where we're breaking the 50-day. We just don't want to be there. Here's where earnings, right, came out, traded down. We just finally got above this. I really don't want to break it again. You're sitting on the 8 and the 50, right? Here's your 200, 21. I just don't want to see that again. And I don't think I'm going to be alone in that statement. That people are just not going to want to see that. They're not going to want to hang out there. So a close below the 50-day, and I would be out of it if I was in it. MVST. Let me put this one up. So this was one that we were actually talking about in the community, and what you see here. See, Like you're setting up here. So let's just start here. Okay. So let's bring this all the way back to here for a moment. All right. I don't know how we got all the way over here. Okay. All right. Let's shrink this down. Perfect. Settle this in. Okay. So here we are hitting these points. Hitting these points. Now look at us. Okay. And now you're above this breakout line too. So this is when we were talking about, you know, I just think you have to watch this. I do think it can go. And I do like the move. And breaking these downtrends are huge because the downtrend, when it's this big, you could get back up to here. That becomes your target. So I do think you could get there. Now, closing above here is very big, especially after that nasty red bar, right? Like, look at that nasty red bar of volume. But here's where you're getting to. This would be your first level. You'd be shooting for this 15, 20 level before you start trying to get, you know, climb the wall of worry. You know, and I do want to point out one thing, just coming back to me with this mRNA, and I think this is important. You know, like in the community today, we were trading this, and we were trading the BNTXs, right? We've been in them for a while. When you're up this high, you need to be trading them. This is very difficult for you to be building a position. You need this to blow off base and then build a position. So as I'm pointing out, I just want to make sure I'm clear. Like as I'm pointing out with like the Amgens and how this thing could go up 200-300 fold, right? Yes, it doesn't happen in a day. And so right now you're in one phase where you're running up, and you can trade those, but you need to trade them. Like you can't. It's very difficult for you to use this bottom as a stop, to use a 20, you know what I mean? You're using what, 70 points as a stop? Like that's a lot. So you have to look at them as trades. So I hope that's clear. But in regards to MVST, you know, get through this 15.25 next, and then just keep working your way up. But it looks great. It's acting great. On semiconductors, you know, at least one semiconductor seemed to have a good day, right? It's just hanging in there. It keeps hitting that 44.59, bonk, right? One, breaks it. What happens when it breaks it, right? Here it was resistance, resistance, resistance. What's it do? It flips to support when it breaks. Flipped, support, support, support. There's your stop. I mean, it's really that clear. You don't even need to wait for it to break this low of the flag. If I close below this 44.59, you have an issue, and I would not be in it. But other than that, I think it's setting up. I think it's setting up for higher. I think all semiconductors are. But then I think if you always talk to me, I always think semiconductors are setting up. But I like the space. I really like the space right now. I mean, pent-up demand, limited supply, and they can set their prices and raise their prices. Like it's pretty hard to screw that up and not make money. Path, you know, these are ones that we've been looking at for a while, and let's just get into this one. You know, look here, look at this range. So 70, 79, 64, 84. Look where we're sitting. I can't stress enough that when you have a new issue, just draw a line off the high of that day and the low of that day. That shows you where your major support is, because that's not retail that's holding that up day one. That's either an institution, i.e. investment bank's trading floor, or it's some fund like Fidelity or some fund somewhere else that's doing that. And that's who's selling here, and that's who's buying here. And you can see if you look at these lines, you got rid of everything and got rid of all your noise. Look, cuts, right? What's it become? Resistance. Resistance, resistance, right? So until you flip this level, there's really no reason to be in this. 64.84, you need to flip, and then you could take a look at it. But I don't think you're getting much higher than this 70 for now. I really don't. You're going to break this trend line when you do, but you still have to get up into this and start working through this. And I guarantee you that when we throw these in, and I do a volume by price, we're going to find out that, right, we're below point of control. You haven't even started getting through the shelf yet. So you're behind the point of control, which is the purple line. You're behind VWAP of volume by price. You're below the 50-day. You have a lot of issues. You had a lot of stuff you have to work off here before I would be involved with this one. RBLX had a great day. I'll just leave these up here for now, but closed right at the 50-day though, didn't we? Right? RBLX closed right at the 50-day, and that also just happens to coincide with breaking out of this 84.16 level, which is great, but now you need to see follow through. And you have earnings coming out in about a week. I wouldn't be playing this. The only way I would play this, let me get rid of these indicators. The only way that I would play this would be very short term and just solely based upon breaking out over that high. And then you could look at trying to trade it, get up in it, and then manage the position. But other than that, I'd be really, really cautious here. It's nothing for this to look like it's going to break out like it always does and then just fall back and collapse. The good news is that you're above this 84.16. That's what you've been waiting for. So if you can keep working your way up the tops of these wicks, right, and start using them as support levels, you can get back here. But there's a lot of work there. So SHOP has just been a just absolute cash cow. But the issue with it is just the way it's been trading. It's been very difficult to make any money with it. And let's get into this right here. So, it's one that we covered over and over again in the newsletter, and sometimes we do well and sometimes we don't. It just doesn't seem to be able to keep going. And now you're just sitting in this huge basing area. So let's see how this plays out. I would be looking for this to close over this level. This 1553, you can see us hitting here over and over again. We can get rid of these indicators for a moment. You can just see how you're trapped in here. You can't even when you broke out, you didn't close over it. So it's pretty clear that this level and these wicks need to be respected. So closing above that probably means that you push to 1660. Snap did what we thought it was finally going to do, and look at the close. Okay, and it's the one thing that people really weren't talking about today in the community at all. Even on Twitter, I didn't see a lot of people talking about it like that. This is an all-time high close. Not a blip anywhere about it. So we're in this from the newsletter at 76. You can get a free copy of the newsletter, a weekly free copy by the link that's in the description and in the bio. So, but you can see what's going on here, right? So now that you're above this, get above the 79.18 and you could flip. But closing there is huge. That's huge. A lot of people are not paying attention to this. Volume is low. We know why volume is low. People are waiting for the CPI. So now in regards to Ternium, okay, this is just beautiful. It's 45 degrees. It's probably all institutional buying. I mean, that's just like perfect, that angle. I mean, it's very hard to find something negative about this to say. And the volume just keeps breaking out above average. Just ride it for all it's worth if you're in it. I wouldn't be adding to it because I don't know when the party's going to end. But when you broke out here, I mean, what a great trade. Just a beautiful trade.
Data connection
and it looks to me like it's ready to continue. So I would leave it alone. If I owned this, I would leave it alone. Do you have an event that's coming up? No, you already had an event. And you're crushing numbers. Look at your earnings, 211, 307, 521. Like you are crushing on the earnings front. UPWK. So I know a lot of people are looking at this and waiting, and you kind of got your signal today. So let's just go through this. You came out with earnings. They weren't bad, right? Stock sold off. They weren't good enough. But you see this right here? It's basically a bullish engulfing right on your 50-day. This is a very simple place to trade this, right? If you're looking for owning this long term, all you have to do is just use this low as your stop and put the trade on. You put the trade on now if you really wanted to. Breaking the higher high would give you more probability, right? Breaking above this, right? But that might give you another 50 cents of loss. So if you don't want to wait for that, just buy it. And then if it closes below this, get out. If it's one you really want to own, to me, there's some other things here where you have this trend line. Like, look, I'll do this really quickly, but you have like a really wonky trend line right here, right? And you probably can clone this because you want to clone them so that you have the same trajectory and just see if it fits over here somewhere. And it kind of really doesn't. So we're just going to leave it up here at the top for a moment. So what you're seeing here is just getting to that level. Here, now look at this. And you overlay the 200 with it. So you have a couple things going for you here. And if I was going to buy it, this is where you buy it. and then you just hope you don't get stopped out and stay in it. And then you can get to the 52. You can get to the 50-day pretty easily. So I could see why you would do that trade, but it's got a lot of uphill battles. But if you're just looking for a short-term trade, it's there. So maybe we bottomed again is what we're thinking here, right? So come up, gap down, don't take out the breakout bar, right? Come through this level, don't close below the 381.31. What do resistance lines become? They become support, right? Now the 8 has flipped to what? Resistance. So you're stuck in here, and you're stuck up below this, and then you're trying to get up to here to 406. So what you could do is just on a higher high, you could buy this and try and get up and in it to stay in it. But getting above a higher high, for those that have watched that candlestick video, and I'd recommend you watch that candlestick video at the end of this, it actually shows how to use candlesticks effectively. I would definitely watch it if you haven't. But in regards to that, that's a Morningstar pattern, and so that can flip. ZTS. So in regards to this, what you're seeing here, you're just seeing it base, and I just want to cover this really quickly. Let me just show you this. So this was earnings, okay? And this is the reason I wanted to cover it. See here, that was your high. Now let's look at this. And this, again, ZTS. So what they did was they gapped me over it. So what would someone like me that's a trader think on the open? Oh, they're going to gap it over the high. This is going to run, right? And you buy the stock. And then it comes down, and then you come in and you wait, and then they gap it over that again. Oh, it's going to go this time. And now here we are. So to me, this is setting up to roll. And they're playing games by opening it up and dumping stock. So that's what's been happening here. There's no follow through on earnings, so I'd be really cautious here. If I was long this and I was in for a long time, I would be using this as my stop. Other than that, I would not be buying this. So that's it. As always, subscribe to the channel, click notifications, and reach out and comment if there's anything that I can help with.